Rafi was a fisherman who lived in a quiet coastal village. His home stood close to the sea, built from wood and palm leaves. Every morning before sunrise, he pushed his small fishing boat into the water, carrying his nets and a few tools. The sea had always been his friend. It gave him food, peace, and purpose. That morning started like any other day. The sun was low on the horizon, painting the water gold. The air smelled of salt and seaweed. Rafi smiled as he felt the cool breeze touch his face. He believed it would be a good day for fishing. He tied his boat's rope, adjusted the sail, and rowed far from the shore. By midday, the weather began to change. The blue sky turned gray. The waves started to rise and crash louder than usual. The wind blew from a strange direction, strong enough to shake his small boat. Rafi frowned. He had seen storms before, but this one came too fast, like it had appeared out of nowhere. He tried to turn back, but the wind fought him. The sea roared. Raindrops began to fall, hitting his skin like small stones. The horizon disappeared behind a wall of water. The storm had trapped him. Rafi held the wooden oars tightly. His arms burned from the effort, but he refused to give up. He shouted for help, though he knew no one could hear him. The waves lifted his boat high, then dropped it hard again and again. The sound of thunder echoed through the sky. A flash of lightning hit nearby, lighting the sea in white. Rafi saw something large in the distance, maybe a rock or an island, but before he could steer toward it, a massive wave crashed into his side. His boat flipped. He fell into the cold, violent water. He tried to swim, but the waves dragged him under. He kicked hard, gasping for air every time his head broke the surface. Then something hit his shoulder and everything went dark. When Rafi opened his eyes again, he was lying on the sand. The storm was gone. The sky above was bright and calm, with only a few clouds drifting by. The sea looked peaceful, as if nothing had happened. He coughed and sat up slowly, his body aching. He looked around. His boat was half broken and stuck near the rocks. One oar was missing, and most of his fishing gear had disappeared. He touched his head and found a small wound, but it was not deep. He was alive, but where was he? The place looked nothing like his home. The beach was wide, covered with smooth white sand. The trees nearby were tall and strange, their leaves dark green and shiny. He saw flowers of colors he had never seen before. They almost seemed to glow faintly in the sunlight. Rafi stood up and checked his compass. The small metal needle spun in circles, refusing to point north. He shook it, but it didn't change. Something was wrong. He had fished in this region for years. He knew every island and rock in the sea near his village, but this island, it wasn't supposed to exist. He whispered to himself. This island wasn't on any map. The words made him uneasy. He dragged his boat further up the beach and looked for food or water. He found a narrow path leading into the forest. The air grew cooler there, and the sound of insects filled his ears. He followed a stream until he reached a small pool of clean water. He drank and washed his face. Then he saw something that made him stop. Footprints. Human footprints. They were fresh. Rafi looked around quickly, but no one was there. He decided to follow them, keeping his steps quiet. The path led him deeper into the forest. The trees grew thick and twisted, their roots crawling across the ground like veins. Birds flew above, their calls sharp and unfamiliar. After a long walk, he reached a clearing. In the middle stood something unexpected, a metal structure half covered in vines and rust. It looked like a bunker or an underground base. A torn flag hung from one corner, its colors faded. Rafi's heart started to beat faster. He touched the side of the structure. The metal was cold and rough. Strange markings were carved into it like numbers or symbols. He found a small door almost hidden under the plants. When he tried to pull it open, it didn't move. Then he noticed a keypad beside it. It was broken, but a faint red light still glowed on its surface. He stepped back in shock. How could it still have power after all these years? The design looked old, maybe from decades ago. He felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Who had built this? What were they doing here? The sun began to set, painting the sky orange. Rafi knew he couldn't explore at night. He returned to the beach, gathered dry branches, and made a small fire. The light danced on the sand as he sat beside it, drying his clothes. He took out his small fishing knife and kept it close. The sound of the forest at night was strange. He heard rustling, clicking, and sometimes whispers that might have been the wind. As he sat there, his mind replayed the day. The storm, the island, the bunker. None of it made sense. He thought about his village. Would they be looking for him? Could anyone even find this place? Suddenly he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Near his fire in the soft sand there were new footprints. He looked at his own feet to be sure, then at the others. They were larger than his, and the toes pointed toward him, not away. Someone had been standing there watching him. Rafi grabbed his knife and looked around, but the night was too dark beyond the firelight. The trees swayed in the wind, and every shadow looked like a figure. His heart pounded. He waited, listening carefully, but no one came out. He stayed awake for hours, staring at the edge of the forest. At some point, he thought he saw a flicker of light deeper inside, like someone was carrying a small lantern. But it vanished quickly. When the first rays of dawn touched the sea, Rafi was still sitting beside his fire, eyes heavy but alert. The forest was quiet again. The footprints had been real. He wasn't alone on this island. He stood up and looked toward the place where he had seen the metal bunker. The morning light revealed a thin trail of smoke rising from that direction. Someone was living here. Rafi took a deep breath and decided he had to find out who. Because whatever secret this island was hiding, it was something people had tried to keep buried for a very long time. And now he was trapped in the middle of it. The morning sun rose slowly, turning the sea silver and the forest green. Rafi rubbed his eyes, tired after a night without sleep. The footprints near his campfire had vanished under the soft waves of the tide, but he still remembered their shape clearly. Someone had stood there watching him while he slept. He picked up his fishing knife and looked toward the forest again. The thin trail of smoke he had seen before was gone now, hidden by the trees. But he knew what he had seen. Someone was out there. Rafi decided to explore again. He tied a piece of cloth to a long stick, hoping to use it as a flag if he needed to signal for help. His compass still spun in circles, so he used the rising sun to keep direction. As he walked, he marked the trees with small cuts using his knife, making sure he could find his way back to the shore. The forest was alive with strange sounds. Birds he had never seen before hopped from branch to branch, and small animals ran between the roots. The deeper he went, the darker it became. The air felt heavy, filled with the smell of damp earth and moss. He finally reached the same clearing as yesterday. The bunker looked even older in daylight. Rust covered most of its metal walls, and plants had grown through the cracks. Rafi circled around it, looking for another entrance. He found broken wires, old boxes, and pieces of metal scattered around like someone had left in a hurry long ago. Then he noticed something strange. One side of the bunker wall had a long scratch mark. It wasn't made by a person. It looked like something large had clawed through it. He touched the mark carefully. The metal had been bent outward, not inward. That meant something had broken out, not in. He felt a chill run down his back. Still, curiosity pushed him forward. He went back to the main door with the keypad. The red light was faint, but still there. He pressed a few buttons. Nothing happened. Then he noticed a small metal box half buried under the leaves beside the door. Inside it, he found an old ID card, faded but still readable. It had a photo of a man wearing a white coat. The name under it said, Dr. Mason, 1974 Research Unit. Rafi didn't know what the card meant, but the year caught his eye. 1974, that was more than 40 years ago. Why was a scientist's card here on an island that didn't exist on maps? He pocketed the card and stood quietly, thinking. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound from behind him. It was quick, like a footstep on dry leaves. He turned fast, holding his knife, but saw no one. The forest was silent again. He waited for a minute, but nothing moved. He decided to leave and return later with more light. But before he could take another step, a voice came from the trees. Don't touch that door. Rafi froze. A man stepped out from behind a large tree. He was tall, with gray hair and a long beard. His clothes were torn and his face looked tired. He held no weapon, only a wooden stick. Rafi tightened his grip on his knife. Who are you? He asked. The man raised his hand slowly. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. His voice was rough and dry. You shouldn't be here. I didn't come by choice, Rafi said. My boat was caught in a storm. I washed up here. Where is this place? The old man looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. You shouldn't have found it. No one should, Rafi frowned. This island, it isn't on any map. Why? The man turned his eyes toward the bunker. Because it was erased. They tried to make sure no one would ever find it again. Rafi took a step closer. Who erased it? The old man didn't answer right away. He seemed to be thinking, maybe deciding how much to tell. Finally, he said, "People who wanted to hide what they did here. A long time ago, this island was used for research. Scientists came here to work on secret experiments. They said it was for defense, but it wasn't. Something went wrong. After that, they left in a hurry and removed the island from every record." Rafi stared at him in disbelief. "Experiments? What kind?" The old man's eyes darkened. "The kind that should never have been done. And now the island itself doesn't let anyone leave easily." Rafi's heart began to pound. "How long have you been here?" The man looked away. "Too long. I stopped counting years." For a while, both of them stood in silence, the wind moving softly through the trees. Then the old man said, "If you want to survive, stay away from that bunker. It's not safe." He turned and began walking back into the forest. "Wait," Rafi called. "Please help me fix my boat. I just want to go home." The man didn't stop walking. "No one leaves," he said quietly. Then he disappeared among the trees. Rafi felt a wave of confusion and fear. Who was that man? What had really happened on this island? And what did he mean by "no one leaves"? He walked back to the shore, his mind full of questions. The sun was already low, and he didn't want to stay in the forest after dark again. When he reached the beach, he checked his boat. The damage was worse than he thought. One side was cracked and the rope had snapped. It would take days to repair. He decided to gather some wood to make a small shelter for the night. As he worked, he noticed something strange again. Pieces of old metal were buried under the sand near the rocks like parts of a crashed machine. He pulled one out. It was covered in symbols and numbers just like the bunker. The island was full of secrets. That night he made another fire and cooked a few small fish he had caught near the shore. The sound of the waves calmed him, but deep inside he felt watched again. He kept looking at the trees behind him, expecting to see the old man or something else. Then he heard a faint hum, a low mechanical sound, coming from the direction of the bunker. It lasted only a few seconds, then stopped. He stood up and listened carefully. The forest was quiet again. Rafi felt his fear mix with curiosity once more. He needed answers. He couldn't just sit and wait. If there was something still working inside that bunker after all these years, maybe it could help him escape. He waited until the moon was high, then quietly started walking back through the forest. The night air was cool, and the sound of insects filled the darkness. When he reached the clearing again, the bunker's faint red light was no longer the only glow. There was another light, pale blue, coming from a small crack near the door. It blinked slowly, like a heartbeat. Rafi knelt down to look closer. He could hear a faint whirring sound inside, like machines waking up after a long sleep. He touched the cold metal again, and suddenly, the keypad flickered to life. The numbers shone bright green, and a small voice, mechanical, quiet, and old, came from inside the door. "Authorization required. Identify user." Rafi jumped back, his heart pounding. The bunker was alive. He looked toward the forest, but there was no sign of the old man. He was alone. The voice repeated, softer this time. "Identify user." Rafi swallowed hard and pulled out the ID card he had found earlier. He didn't know if it would work, but he held it up near the keypad. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft click came from the door. The red light turned green. The door opened slightly. Rafi stared into the dark passage beyond, unsure whether he had just found salvation or something far worse. The sound of the lock echoed softly through the forest. Rafi stared at the heavy metal door that had just unlocked. A cool breeze came out from the dark passage behind it, carrying the smell of old metal and dust. He felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. His heart beat fast, but his hands didn't stop shaking. He pushed the door slowly. It creaked loudly, as if it hadn't been opened in many years. Inside it was dark. Rafi took a burning stick from his small fire and used it as a torch. The orange glow lit up a narrow corridor made of steel walls. Rust and moss covered parts of it, and water dripped from the ceiling in slow drops. He took one careful step after another, his bare feet making soft sounds on the wet floor. The air inside was cold, and the smell was thick, like something that had been sealed for a long time. As he moved forward, he saw old machines, broken screens, and chairs lying on the floor. There were papers scattered everywhere, but most were unreadable. One paper near the wall still had words on it. He picked it up and tried to read. It said, Experiment halted. All units evacuated. Containment breach suspected. Rafi didn't understand all the words, but he knew one thing clearly. Something had gone wrong here. He walked further into the bunker. The corridor turned left and opened into a large room. In the center stood a table covered in dust, and on the table were glass tubes filled with dark liquid. Some tubes were broken and the liquid had dried long ago. On one wall there was a big map of the ocean, showing many islands, but one of them had been marked with a red X. It was the same island he was standing on. He whispered to himself. They tried to hide this place. Suddenly, a sound came from deeper inside the bunker. A soft metallic clang like something had fallen. Rafi froze. His torchlight shook slightly as his hands trembled. He waited, but the sound came again, louder this time. He called out quietly, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the echo of his own voice. Then he saw movement. A shadow passed across the far wall for a brief moment, fast but clear. Someone, or something, was in there with him. He backed slowly toward the door, but before he could leave, a voice spoke from the darkness. "I told you not to come here." Rafi turned and saw the old man again, standing in the doorway of the next room. His face looked pale under the weak light, and his eyes seemed tired but alert. "I had to know," Rafi said. "You said they erased this place. Why, what happened here?" The old man looked around the room as if remembering something painful. "You shouldn't have opened the door," he said softly. "Once this place wakes up, it doesn't go back to sleep." Rafi frowned. "What do you mean?" The man walked to the wall and touched one of the machines. "This bunker was part of a secret project," he said. "They were trying to create something powerful. Not a weapon, but something that could change nature itself. They tested chemicals, radiation, and energy, but they lost control. Whatever they made began to grow, like a living thing. That's when they left the island. But it didn't die." Rafi's voice shook slightly. "You mean it's still here?" The old man nodded. "Yes, it's part of the island now. It hides, but sometimes it wakes when people come too close." Rafi looked around, feeling the air grow heavier. "Then why are you still here?" The man sighed. "Because I was one of them. I worked here when it happened. I stayed to make sure no one else opened this place. But now you've done it." Rafi stepped back, guilt and fear mixing inside him. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I just wanted to find help." The old man looked at him with tired eyes. "Help doesn't come here. This island keeps secrets, and it keeps those who find them." Suddenly the lights in the ceiling flickered. After decades of silence, faint electricity started running through the wires. The machines on the walls hummed softly. One of the broken screens blinked once, then twice before showing a line of text. "System reboot. Project revive. Initializing." Rafi's torchlight flickered, and the air filled with a deep, low hum. The old man cursed under his breath. "It's starting again." He grabbed Rafi's arm. "We have to shut it down. Follow me." They ran through another hallway that led deeper into the bunker. This part looked more damaged. The walls were cracked, and strange vines had grown inside, glowing faintly blue. The roots seemed alive, pulsing like veins. "What are these?" Rafi asked. The man replied, "Part of the experiment. The energy they created mixed with the island's nature. These plants aren't normal anymore." The vines moved slightly as they passed, as if reacting to their presence. One brushed against Rafi's leg, and he jumped back in shock. They reached another door with faded words above it. "Control room." The old man pushed it open. Inside were several machines, a large panel full of buttons, and more broken screens. One screen still worked, showing lines of green text moving fast. The old man began pressing buttons quickly. "The core must still be active. If we don't stop it, it could destroy the whole island." Rafi watched, confused but trying to help. He picked up some metal pieces and moved them away from the controls. The air was getting warmer and the floor vibrated softly. Then, from behind them, they heard something else. A low growl, not human. Rafi turned around slowly. In the corner of the room, the vines had gathered together, forming something that looked almost like a shape. A tall figure made of glowing roots and earth. Its eyes were bright blue. The old man whispered, "It's awake." The figure moved slowly, its steps heavy. Rafi backed away, holding his knife even though he knew it was useless. The old man pulled a lever on the control panel and alarms started to ring loudly. Red lights flashed everywhere. The figure stopped for a moment, then turned toward the sound. The old man shouted, "Run!" Raffi didn't wait. He ran out of the room and into the corridor. Behind him, he heard metal breaking and glass shattering. The alarm kept ringing, echoing through the bunker. He ran toward the exit, his breath quick and sharp. When he reached the main door, he pushed it open and stumbled outside into the sunlight. The fresh air filled his lungs, but the forest didn't look calm anymore. Birds were flying in every direction, and the ground trembled slightly. A few seconds later, the old man came out too, coughing and holding his side. His face was pale. "Did it stop?" Raffi asked. The man shook his head weakly. "No, it's spreading. The island is waking up." Raffi looked at the trees, and some of them were glowing faintly, just like the vines inside the bunker. The ground near the bunker cracked, and a strange mist rose from it. "What do we do now?" he asked. The old man looked toward the ocean. "We have to find the power source and shut it down completely. It's hidden somewhere in the center of the island." Raffi nodded, even though he was afraid. "Then we go together," he said. The old man gave a tired smile. "You don't understand. If we fail, there won't be an island left to escape from." They both turned toward the forest, where the glowing mist spread between the trees. Somewhere deep inside, the sound of machinery echoed again, steady, growing louder. The island had begun to move. The air around the bunker was no longer still. The ground shook lightly beneath Raffi's feet, and the forest hummed with an unnatural sound. The vines and roots that had glowed faintly before now pulsed brighter, spreading their light through the soil like veins of energy. The old man, still breathing hard from the run, wiped sweat from his forehead. His eyes were fixed on the forest ahead. "It's alive again," he said quietly. "The power has awakened the heart of the island." Raffi tried to stay calm, though fear gripped his chest. "You said we can stop it," he said. "How?" The man nodded weakly. "There's a power core. It's deep inside the island. When the project was built, the scientists buried the energy source underground. If we reach it, we can shut everything down." Raffi looked toward the dark forest. The glow between the trees seemed to move like something breathing. "Then let's go," he said. "Before it spreads." The old man hesitated, then nodded. "We must follow the old tunnel system. There's an entrance hidden near the mountain ridge. It leads straight to the core chamber." They began walking. The path was rough and covered in thick roots. The air felt heavy, filled with a strange vibration that made their skin tingle. Birds flew above them in panic, and small animals rushed away as if fleeing something invisible. The deeper they went, the louder the humming grew. Sometimes the trees seemed to move, their branches turning slightly as if watching the two men pass. Raffi kept his knife ready, though he knew it would do little against something like this. After an hour of walking, they reached a rocky hill. Behind a curtain of hanging vines, the old man found what he had been searching for, a round metal hatch half buried in the ground. It was old and rusty, but still strong. "This is it," the man said. "The tunnel starts here." They both worked together to pull the hatch open. It made a long creaking sound before revealing a narrow staircase that led down into darkness. Raffi lit a torch with dry leaves and followed the man inside. The air was cold and smelled of damp earth and metal. As they descended, Raffi saw broken pipes running along the walls, some still humming faintly. The tunnel opened into a wide passage where the walls were covered in thick, glowing vines. Their light was bright enough to see without the torch. Raffi looked around in wonder and fear. "It's like the island is alive inside," he said. The old man nodded slowly. When the experiment failed, the energy didn't vanish. It fused with the island's roots. It turned nature into part of the machine. They continued forward, moving carefully. Every sound echoed in the tunnel, every step, every breath. After some time, they reached a large steel door with faded words scratched into it. "Core access. Authorized personnel only." The old man pressed his hand against the cold surface. "Behind this door lies the heart," he said softly. "The power that keeps this island hidden and alive." Raffi helped him push it open. The hinges were stiff, but together they managed. What they saw inside took Raffi's breath away. The chamber was enormous. In the center stood a tall machine that looked like a giant crystal tower. Its surface pulsed with blue and green light, and thick vines wrapped around it, feeding off the energy. The ground below was covered in strange patterns, glowing faintly like circuits. The air vibrated with a deep sound, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Raffi stepped closer. "So this is the power source?" Yes, the old man said. It was meant to draw energy from the earth. But it became something else. Now it feeds itself. It creates storms, distorts signals, and hides the island from maps. It doesn't want to be found, Rafi frowned. Then how do we stop it? The old man pointed toward a panel near the base of the machine. There's a control point. If we cut the main connection, it will lose power. But once it starts shutting down, the energy will try to fight back. Rafi didn't fully understand, but he nodded. Tell me what to do. The man walked to the panel and began pulling off the metal cover. Inside were glowing cables running in all directions. He took a deep breath. We'll need to cut these 3 lines, he said. Red, yellow, and blue. In that order. Rafi picked up a sharp piece of metal and waited for the signal. The old man counted softly. Now, Rafi cut the red cable first. Sparks flew and the machine made a deep groaning sound. The light flickered once, then steadied. He cut the yellow cable next and the ground trembled. The glow in the vines dimmed slightly. Before he could cut the last one, the sound of cracking filled the chamber. The vines that covered the walls began to move violently. One large root broke free from the floor and whipped toward them. Rafi jumped aside as it hit the ground, throwing dust into the air. It's fighting back, the old man shouted. Finish it. Rafi crawled forward, grabbed the blue cable, and swung the metal shard down hard. The cable snapped, sending out a bright flash of light. The entire chamber shook. The machine's lights began to fade one by one until only a dull glow remained. The deep humming sound grew weaker and weaker, and then everything went silent. Rafi covered his face as small pieces of metal fell from the ceiling. When the noise stopped, he opened his eyes. The glowing vines had turned gray. The energy was gone. He turned to the old man. Did we do it? The old man leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Yes, he said. The core is shutting down. But then a soft rumble came from above them. Dust fell from the ceiling and cracks formed in the walls. The island is collapsing, the man said. The power was holding everything together. We need to get out now. Rafi helped him stand, and together they ran back through the tunnel. The walls shook and pieces of rock fell around them. The vines were breaking apart, their glow fading completely. When they reached the staircase, sunlight was shining faintly from above. They climbed quickly, gasping for air as the tunnel behind them began to crumble. At last, they pushed open the hatch and crawled out onto the hill. The forest around them was changing fast. The trees that had glowed before were now normal again, their color fading to green. The trembling slowed and the strange humming sound was gone. Rafi looked at the old man. Is it over? The man nodded weakly. Yes, the island will rest now, but so will everything that lived with it. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of waves crashing softly against the shore. For the first time since he arrived, the air felt clean. The sea breeze was calm again. Rafi helped the old man sit down on a rock. His face looked peaceful but tired. You can leave now, the man said quietly. The sea will guide you back. Rafi looked toward the beach. His damaged boat still lay there, but now the water around it was calm, almost inviting. He turned back to the man. Come with me, he said. You don't have to stay here. The old man smiled faintly. This island has been my prison for years. Now that it sleeps, I can rest too. Rafi wanted to argue, but he saw the calm in the man's eyes and stopped. He nodded slowly. Thank you, he said. The man gave a gentle nod. Go, fisherman. Tell the world that this place must stay forgotten. Rafi turned toward the shore. As he walked away, the wind carried a soft sound behind him, a whisper that might have been the island's last breath. He reached his boat and began pushing it into the water. The sky was clear now and the waves were gentle. He looked back one last time. The island stood silent under the sunlight, peaceful and still, but somewhere deep below the ground, in the chamber where the machine once glowed, a single small light flickered again, a tiny pulse like a heartbeat waiting to wake. Rafi rowed his small boat carefully, feeling the gentle rhythm of the waves for the first time in days. His hands were sore, and his clothes were torn and dry from the harsh events on the island. But the calm sea brought a sense of relief he hadn't felt since the storm began. He kept glancing back at the island. It looked ordinary now, almost like any other place he had fished near before. No glowing vines, no strange hums, no shaking earth. The island seemed peaceful, hiding the secrets it had revealed only hours ago. Rafi's mind was busy replaying everything that had happened. The storm, the bunker, the glowing vines, the strange energy core, and the old man who had guided him through it all. He realized how close he had come to danger at every turn. The waves carried him smoothly, and the horizon slowly grew wider. In the distance, he saw another familiar island, the one he had passed many times in his life. Relief filled his chest. He knew he was close to home. Suddenly his boat rocked violently. He gripped the sides, fear returning. A shadow passed under the water. He held his breath, but nothing surfaced. He shook his head. "It's just my imagination," he whispered. Even though the island seemed calm, he knew the energy he had seen might still be alive, somewhere deep underground. He had shut down the core, but the island had been part of a project that nobody should have attempted. Could it wake again someday? He didn't know, but he hoped not. Hours passed as he rowed. The sun climbed higher, warming his back. Rafi's thoughts wandered to his village. His family would be worried. No one knew he had left that morning, and the storm had struck so quickly that no one could have followed. He imagined the moment he would arrive, faces full of worry turning into relief, children running to see him, the smell of fresh bread from his home. It was a simple life, but it had never felt more precious than now. As he neared the shore, he noticed another small boat pulled up near the sand. A man waved at him. It was one of the villagers, a friend who had been searching for him since morning. Relief turned into emotion. "Rafi, we were so worried," the man shouted. Rafi smiled faintly and waved back. "I'm okay. Just a rough storm." The villagers helped him pull the boat to the shore. They wrapped him in blankets, offering warm food and water. As they listened to his story, Rafi realized he couldn't tell them everything. The island's secrets had to stay hidden. Some things were too dangerous to share. He told them part of the truth: the storm, the strange island, the old bunker, but left out the energy core and the glowing vines. The villagers gasped and asked many questions, but Rafi simply said, "Some mysteries are better left alone." That night, Rafi sat outside his home, staring at the stars. The sea was calm and the moonlight reflected on the waves. He thought about the island. Even though it was hidden and dangerous, he felt a strange connection to it now. He had seen something incredible, something that most people would never believe. In the quiet of the night, he felt grateful. Grateful for survival, for the old man's guidance, and for the life he still had. He knew he had changed. The island had shown him the limits of nature and human curiosity. It had taught him caution and respect for the unknown. The next morning, Rafi returned to his fishing routine. The village life seemed ordinary after the chaos he had faced. Yet he noticed small changes in himself. He was more aware of the sea, more careful with his boat, and more observant of the skies. He spoke less of the supernatural, but he never forgot the lessons the island had given him. Weeks passed. The villagers returned to their normal lives, and Rafi continued to fish, but his mind sometimes wandered to the hidden island. He wondered if the energy core was truly gone, or if a small pulse remained deep underground, waiting for the next chance to awaken. One evening, as he repaired his nets, a familiar shadow appeared near the edge of the village. He looked up. It was the old man. Rafi froze. He had thought the man might never leave the island, or perhaps he had returned to the place he had guarded for decades. The old man approached slowly. "I had to see that you were safe," he said. His voice was calm, almost tired, but there was a faint strength in his eyes. "The island is quiet for now, but it will always remember those who disturb it." Rafi nodded. "I understand. Thank you for guiding me." The old man smiled faintly. "Go on with your life. The world does not need to know what happened there. Some truths are dangerous if shared." They walked together for a while, the ocean breeze carrying a sense of peace. Then the old man turned toward the horizon. "It is time for me to return," he said. He disappeared into the night, leaving Rafi to the familiar sounds of the village and the sea. Rafi looked toward the distant horizon where the hidden island lay. He knew it was still out there, untouched by maps and the outside world, keeping its secrets safe. For decades it had slept quietly, and now it would continue to do so, at least for now. As days turned into months, Rafi often returned to the shore. He would look at the calm sea, remembering the storm, the bunker, and the glowing vines. Sometimes he swore he saw a faint blue glow deep beneath the waves, but he never went back. Some mysteries he knew were better left alone. One night, under a full moon, Rafi stood at the edge of the water. He remembered the machine's heartbeat, the energy pulsing through the roots, and the old man's words. The island had been a warning and a lesson. Humanity could never fully control nature, and some forces were meant to remain hidden. He whispered quietly to himself, "Rest now, island. May you stay forgotten." The waves lapped gently against the shore, and the night was peaceful. Somewhere far away, hidden under the earth, the faint pulse of energy stirred one last time. Small, almost imperceptible. But it was enough to remind the world that the island, though quiet, had not fully forgotten. Rafi smiled faintly and turned back toward the village. His life had returned to normal, but he carried the memory of the island with him, a secret that would stay buried forever in the depths of his heart. The sea was calm. The sky was clear, and the hidden island, forgotten by maps and humanity, waited patiently for the day it might awaken again.